Hi, Paul. Thanks for joining me today.
I'm ready to rock.
I normally start off with the same question, really, with all these interviews. And can you tell me a little bit about the musical projects you're working on at the moment?
At the moment, well, I'm on tour with Mr. Big, and so we're playing those tunes. And I would say that the challenge, I'm a microscope person more than a telescope person. I tend to look at the small details. And the challenging detail for me is like how to play an 8-bar solo, because that's what most of the songs have, and which is short. Even 12-bar blues, just one time through is 12 bars, but eight, and usually you get more than one time through. And so if as a soloist, I really have to condense whatever I do. So anyway, that's my world.
I suppose there's a real art to that, isn't there, in terms of actually going, well, I've got a limit now, and I've got to make a statement now in this 8 bars. What do I do?
And I mean, fortunately, nobody in the band has yelled at me for improvising. And there are certain songs where the melody is the melody, and I stick to it because if it's hummable, I tend to play it like it was on the record. But if I listen to the record and I was sort of improvising there, then I feel it gives me a license to continue that journey. And just every night I get some songs to go very well. I mean, the solos, and other ones they don't, and every night's different. And thankfully the when it doesn't go well, it's not bad enough for anybody to complain. It's just in my world. I like, that was better the night before, or it'll be better tomorrow.
Are you doing sort of some where you're actually doing note for note from particular songs just because it has to be that way?
Well, we're doing the whole Lean Into It record, that was sort of the promise. And then when we marketed the tour, and I love that idea. I think that's my favorite Mr. Big album, so I'm happy to do it. The challenge was, when that record came out in 1991, maybe, so we were much younger then, and to sing it now, it goes a lot bit smoother if we lower the keys. And the usual thing is, you tune down your guitar a half step, but some of the keys we need to take way, way lower. So that involved so a lot of times just playing it, transposing it down, and with a song that might originally have an open, like a riff that open string, like for example, a song called Never Say Never, which has like a really obvious open E. It's like has that E. But now we're playing it a fourth lower, which is in B, and so I have to create that with a fretted, and that's, I can do it, but but I have to kind of rethink it, and there's a lot of that going on. And really, the hardest part is not the technical part; it's more like remembering, like, if you have the habit, like, oh, that song used to be in D, but it's not anymore, and all the places where there were like this sort of the common cowboy chords. Now there's something crazy.
It's remembering to not do it how you used to do it.
Exactly. Forget everything you knew. Everything you knew was wrong, and it's a new. But well, we've been playing this on the road for months now, so that fortunately is, we've sort of been able to get through that mental barrier.
Have the shows been going well?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's two parts, I suppose, us and them. There's have we been playing okay, which that's been going pretty well, and then the audiences have been great, really nice packed houses everywhere. Uh, yeah, so that's what you hope for, and then you just have to survive sleeping on a bus, and you know every day. Some days you get good food, some days you don't. Some days you don't.
Have you got any sort of general tips for aspiring musicians for how to survive on the road?
Oh, let's see. Well, I'm not 22 anymore, so as soon as I get on the bus, I go straight to my bunk. I'm just like, I just try to get sleep. And there's sort of the joke, like when you're a kid, you try to sneak out of the house and go to the party. When you get older, you try to sneak out of the party to go home. I'm in that phase of life. It's like, as soon as the gig's over, like, okay, how can I get to sleep? So there's that. But if you're 22, then I suppose you have a license to do whatever you want, and you'd probably be okay. I'd say the one unusual thing, which I haven't really had to do lately, but this is a kind of advice that can come in handy. And actually, I did it yesterday. Is buy a box of surgical gloves, the rubber ones, disposable surgical, like if you go to the dentist puts them on, and figure out if you've got big hands, get the extra large ones, whatever size fits, and then if you have to take a shower before you play, which sometimes, if the bus gets in, you got to like quick, just jump in the shower or wash your hair in the sink, or, sometimes you have to do that. You put the glove on your fretting, if you're left hand, or if you're right-handed guitar player, put it on your left hand, and that way you can wash your hair and it doesn't soak your calluses. And I did that yesterday before the show. I washed my hair in the shower, but I just put my head in. Because the rest of me was relatively clean, and I just didn't want to have junky hair for the show. And I had the rubber glove, and that way, because calluses to me, like if I only had 5 minutes a day to practice, all I would do would be like, I would just bend to keep my calluses in shape. And because without that, I don't want to, that's like the most important thing in terms of, being able to play what I need to. So if your hands get wet, and I remember that when I was a kid, because when I was a kid, like hair was really important. So I would, a lot of times I would take a shower right before the gig, so I'd have like the ultimate big hair, and then I'd go on stage and go like, "What's wrong? Like, why am I playing so crappy?" And I didn't realize it was because my fingers were soggy.
Big hair isn't really a problem for me anymore, I've got to say. But obviously you've been involved in music education for quite a long time, really, since the beginning of your career. In fact, I know I've got a worn out VHS copy of Intense Rock 2 somewhere myself. Is that something you really enjoy doing, teaching?
Oh, I love teaching. I'm very lucky because the people who come to me, like I've been teaching at an online school for over 10 years, and I have the great fortune of having a group of students that are really into it. So right off the bat, we're in good shape, and besides that, from listening to musicians and watching them, because it's all with video exchange, it's opened up ideas and challenges and areas of music that I wouldn't have thought to go that deeply into. And it's interesting, and the teacher learns the most. And that's the thing, the nice thing about the video exchange, none of it's live, which is better. The student makes a video, I watch it, and it gives me time to come up with a better answer. Because sometimes I don't know the answer right away. They might ask, but I'll spend anywhere from, sometimes I know the answer right away and I just dive in. Other times I might take 2 days and really research and go like, well, I don't know. Let me figure out some ideas. Or even if I do know, I want to be able to do a more inspiring demonstration or have better examples. And it'll lead me down these really interesting paths.
Even when it's things that you're doing yourself, and they go, "How do you do that?" And then you go, "How do I do that?"
Yeah, well, that's why a lot of great players have no idea how to teach, because it's instinct. Like if I had to teach somebody how to tie their shoes, yeah, I'm pretty good at tying my shoes. I have no idea how to teach it. I could probably go, well, but I'd get frustrated quickly. Like, but you just do it, And fortunately, I've been teaching long enough where I really have sort of torn it apart in a lot of ways. And if anything, I try to be careful not to just, since I've taught so much, I do have habits and things I tend to go to, and I try to be objective and not just dive into my habits too much and then be open-minded.
I mean, you famously have very eclectic taste in music, and I mean, has that influenced your approach to teaching as well?
Well, I've probably made students learn Carpenter songs more than they ever. I hope it doesn't make them like leave the school, because sometimes I'll go like, what you really need is to listen to the vibrato of Karen Carpenter's singing, and hopefully that doesn't make them just go like, I came here to learn Metallica. But they came to me, so I give them what I feel was helpful and what I love, and I think when I was a student at GIT, I really liked learning from passionate teachers who came from different styles. Because there were no heavy metal teachers or I mean, I guess Frank Gabali was kind of shred, but he was like a jazz fusion guy. And I loved hearing the fingerstyle jazz players, and that was a style of music I had never even heard it at all. It was totally new to me when I went there. But the people who played it were so good at it, and it sounded so cool. And I knew like I was never going to go. It was such a mountain to climb for me that I thought I'm just going to like gaze up at it and its beauty and maybe get a couple things, but. Uh, I love being exposed to different styles, and I hope that my students are similar.
I mean, over the years, I mean, you've gone from sort of tech shred stuff into sort of bluesier stuff now. In fact, you've become a very fine slide player. What are you listening for inspiration at the moment?
Well, the last thing that I learned was an Oscar Peterson piano line. There was a YouTube video where he's playing a blues in C minor, and it's speaking of mountains, it's just a Mount Everest of blues playing. And I thought I'm going to listen to it until I find like two bars that seem like they might be possible to translate to guitar. And it took about 3 minutes in. There's one line, and I learned it about 4 days ago. And he plays it in C. Let me see if I can play it in the same key he does. One, two, 1, 2, 3, 4. There we go. And slow. 1, 2, 3, 4. That is just the most awesome thing I've ever heard in my life. And again, if you look on YouTube, it's Oscar Peterson blues in C, and it comes in like 3 minutes, 2 seconds, somewhere on there. The whole band stops, and then it's just such a good line.
Are you looking at any particular techniques at the moment, or any new styles as well?
I think if technique things come into play, at this point, I get frustrated. Like, technique, I don't want to work on that. I want to work on music. So when I was a kid, I was excited about technique, especially because I was a Van Halen fan, and Eddie kept coming up with like every album would have some new technical idea that I would try. But at a certain point, now it's more about connecting my inner musical voice and making sure that there is one to what I'm playing. And a lot of that has to do with like, I have so many vocal melodies in my head from growing up with Beatles and 70s pop radio that and I realized that I'm much better if I have to like, play a melody, I'm better at kazoo than guitar. And that's kind of embarrassing because I'm supposed to be a guitar player. So I've been getting better at it, and a lot of it has to do with knowing my interval relationships on the fretboard. So if if I hear "Top of the World" by the Carpenters, first of all, I don't know a perfect pitch, so I don't know what key it's in. But if I just pick a likely key, if it's in A, that's the melody. Which on a kazoo, I don't think about it. But if I thought about the intervals, no, 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 that's the fifth. That'd be the fifth, the third, the second, the root. and that's a lot more thinking than what I had to do with the kazoo. But then, of course, I don't want to just play it. I want to have style. You know, where are the places where there's vibrato, and where are the places where there's a slide. You know, da, da, da. Probably a slide to the third. Then it's at the probably better to finger it there because then I'm all set up for the slide. Because originally I was playing. I'm not gonna be able to play with any soul there, but here. And then have the right legato. Da, da, da. What is it? And then, you know, the chords are changing, so that's like an extra dimension of relationships. So that sort of thing, I'm working more and more because I just want to be as good as I am at the kazoo on the stupid guitar.
So you're working on your inner ear and trying to get the instrument out of the way almost, just to have pure music.
Yeah, and melodies are so nice, but they're hard. They're much. I mean, to me, they're much harder than playing fast. Because if you play fast, you just get like the general shape, and you know, it's okay. A mixolydian and just sort of burn through it. And as long as you never stop or slow down, you're never wrong. But as the minute you want to emphasize something or you know, sort of, you know, commit to a note, that you got to commit to one that you actually meant. And and that's the thing. Like melody sort of gives it meaning.
Is that one of the reasons you got interested in slide guitar?
I think slide. I can't even remember. It was a real slow process. I think there was like one song that I did a couple albums ago where I tried it and it kind of worked, and then it started to get easy. I mean, I think two things. One, I discovered that the finger that was the most comfortable for me. You know, it's not everybody. I like the second finger, and the other was discovering what kind of melodies are, you know, sort of lend themselves to slide. And because not if I had to play a scale with slide, you know, just, you know, in order, that's the wrong. That doesn't work very well. But let's see that Carpenter's one of them. I've never done this, but let's see. And now that move at the end, that's a big deal. That move from the root to the fifth. And guitar players a lot of times don't know about that one or haven't really worked out the technique for it because we're so used to doing, you know, the seventh, because that's the easy one to play. But, you know, if you just practice Mozart, if you go, you know, a lot of times you have to do a little roll. Your wrist has to move. But so many melodies, like singers, like all the time, because that's the thing. There's no sixth and no seventh. It just jumps straight from the root down to the fifth. The other one is jumping up. So like the solo in Birthday, the that's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The second note is the fifth. There's nothing. That's a big leap. And you know, that's it's not, if you know what's coming and you practice a little bit, it's not, you know, the hardest thing in the world. But most guitar players, that's not their habit to do that. And that's a good thing to get into your toolbox, is like straight to the fifth in either direction and know what it sounds like, you know the melodies that it came from, because it's a good sound.
It's kind of listen to music and musicians and singers rather than just guitar players.
And the schooling part of it, that allowed me to put a label on it. You know, because before I went to school, I didn't know what intervals were called, or, you know, that system of labeling notes. And you know, of course, you don't want to go so crazy with it where you try to like deduce all your melodies. But, you know, as your ear hears stuff, it goes like, oh, I like that. Why do I like that? You know, you can you start to notice, oh, that's because it's got that little ingredient, whatever it is. And you know, that system of labeling things with intervals can be helpful to keep track of that.
it seems to be that really effective ear training is a mixture of the sort of the school technique and almost the instinct.
Well, the goal is to get it where everything is an instinct. And if, in a way, like a player like Eddie Van Halen, where he's kind of already there, you don't necessarily have to go back and figure out the labeling for everything, you know, unless you really need to do a lot of communication to other people about that thing. But in his case, it was like, you know, hey, Michael, just, you know, keep playing A. And, you know, and then Eddie's just, you know, doing all the wild stuff. But yeah, and the thing is, like, I think it's much easier for whatever reason, just the way our brains are wired, to talk about notes and harmony, which is good, nice. But I think it's much more difficult I don't think there's really a satisfying language to talk about rhythm, dynamics, texture things. It's not as much fun to talk about those, and it's not because they're less important. It's just, you know, something to do with our brains like to talk about notes, and, you know, that I'm no different. I love talking about notes. But when I hear what students need, like if I hear a player, often their notes are just fine, and it's more those other elements. It's like being able to control the texture and the dynamics, making one note quiet, one note loud, one note muted, one note not, one note short, one note long, and all those things. Those I do my best to come up with a language for it, and I always do examples. And well, I'll give you one. So, like when I was a kid, this is probably the most important just lick that I did a lot, which is a shuffle. And if you're doing A, so like 1, 2, 3, 4. Where you're playing a low note that's muted on the bridge with a downstroke, and the upstroke pulls it away. So you end up doing sort of a bounce on the bridge. And I got it from playing lazy, that sort of thing, and just learned how to. And that's so much of my other, you know, tricky stuff came from that, being able to cross over from one string to the next and control the tone and the dynamics of it. It's not like, oh, I played the note, I'm done. It's like, man, you gotta have the, like, intentional tone.
I mean, I think your sense of time as well is also amazing. And even very early on in your career, you had this incredible sort of inner pulse and sense of where things sat.
But that's just from playing in bands, because I did a lot of rehearsing. Especially, I mean, the first band I joined, I was about 11, but when I was 14, my bass player had a car, and so he would pick me up from after high school or junior high, and drive to. We found a lady who let us rehearse in her basement, and I would say we rehearsed at least, you know, 3 or 4 days a week for hours. You know, we'd rehearse, you know, 3 or 4 hours every day, and sometimes at night and on weekends. So we just spent a lot of time playing with a drummer, and so, you know, if you drift, you know it. It's you know, and that's the thing when you're playing by yourself in your bedroom, you know, and you drift off time. You know, nobody gives you, you know, nobody throws a stick at you and goes, "What are you doing?" You know, and really, it doesn't take the other person. I mean, I knew I had the inner sense of like, I'm that's not working, and that happened a lot with solos, because I remember having, you know, I'd have like a solo that worked great in one groove, and then we'd play the next song, and I'd go like, "Wow, I'm going to play that again because that worked great in the last one," and it'd be like, "Man, it's not working at all," and it was really, at first, really confused me, and then I realized, oh, that one's different tempo, and last tune was a shuffle, and this one's not, and the cool thing is if I had a lick that I really liked, a lot of times just on the fly I could modify it slightly to make it work, and so I'd come up with little variations, and a lot of like the kind of snarly Van Halen stuff that, I had a really basic version of the snarly eruption lick, the when you just, and as a teenager, I was on fire with that one, but that one, I started, adding. It started sort of going off. I mean, I'm not playing in time right now, but I could sort of adapt that to any groove I was in, and that's where that came from. Was playing with the drummer.
And it was also, I suppose, that shows that creative mind. I've come up with a lick. How many variations can I come up with?
Yeah, well, you had to, because if your variation isn't working, that's like the alarm, the musical alarm is going off, and so I would just, and anything that I found that would work was relatively easy to do, because if you're doing it during the song, there's no time to like go, well, I'll be back in an hour, or I'll be back in 2 weeks, having worked this up. I just had to find something immediately. And actually, that's probably the most disheartening thing. If I have a student that has spent, they'll go like, yeah, I've been working on this Eric Johnson song for the last year and a half. And I'm like, oh no, don't work on anything for a year and a half. If you don't have it down in 4 days, don't do that yet. Put it on a shelf. Work on things that you can get, either immediately, or maximum a week. Work on something for a year. That, I mean, it's I have to admire their perseverance, but that without fail, when someone does that, it always has the stylistic problems. They know all the notes, they've got the rhythm, but it sounds lousy because all the short and the long and the tonal things aren't there. And really, what they need to do is like just get the primary tone together in their hands. Be able to make notes sound good, and then use that to build a structure.
That's it. Go away and come back.
Yeah, like to build a structure out of styrofoam bricks, and then go, okay, now that I've built the house, how can I change the styrofoam into stone? Like, you're in trouble.
Is it okay if we talk about your gear now?
Oh, sure.
Obviously, you've got a long-standing relationship with Ibanez guitars.
I've got my signature models. The new PGM 1000 is amazing. It's playing my main guitar live at the moment. The PGM 50, which is the black version. They're not, well, the PGM 1000 is actually a neck through. And then the PGM 50 is a bolt on, but they both just feel. And I've got a couple the Fireman guitars out on the road. I mean, they're pretty. The Fireman is pretty different than the PG. The Fireman, the neck's actually based on I'm a big fan of Pat Travers, and it's based on a melody maker that, because Pat used to play those in his, like, the golden Pat Travers era. And so, being a fan, I bought one, and it's thick, chunky 60s neck. And when Ibanez made the first Fireman for me, they said, well, what kind of neck do you want? I said, oh, well, sort of like a melody maker. So they did, something that's chunkier than the typical Ibanez neck. And there's a lot of nice tone in a chunky neck. And so that was nice. And it's a shorter scale, like a Les Paul scale, whereas the PGMs are more like a Strat scale. It's, a subtle difference, but and I enjoy going back and forth. They not radically different, but it's nice to just have something like, oh, feels fresh.
It seems that over the years, you favor guitars, non-tremolo guitars as well. Well,
tremolos are sometimes they just get in the way, because I didn't grow up playing a tremolo. When I was a teenager, I had a Les Paul. And then when I finally got a whammy bar, it wasn't the locking ones, so it wouldn't stay in tune. And so my formative years were non-tremolo. And a lot of times I just bump into it with my hand. And actually, my favorite tremolo right now is I've got some vintage Ibanez from the 80s, the Roadstar model. And some of those, the whammies actually have such a good tone. They really remind me of like the early Van Halen records before Eddie got a locking system. They just have that, they resonate like that. And they stay in tune surprisingly well. Um, but I think if I brought those on the road, I don't know, I'll have to try it someday to see how they do. Because it's, you know, as soon as you start whammying with a non-trem guitar, I might get a little worried about the tuning, but I really haven't tried it yet, so maybe it's okay. I use them in the studio quite a bit. But you know, basically what it is you set it up so if you whammy it, that brings it back into tune, and whenever you bend, that might go slightly flat, and then you whammy it and it brings it back again. So I'm whammying way too much because every time I bend, I got a whammy to fix it. Um, and you can hear Eddie do it. Like the first couple albums, it was the same deal with him before you got the Floyd Rose.
And what are you using for amplifiers at the moment?
For amplifiers, anything clean, which tends to be like the best ones of Marshall 1959 SLP, because that's just like the loudest, cleanest amp you could ever hope for. And then I use pedals to get all the distortion. In front of me as a wedge, I've got a Fender Twin, which is also a good clean amp. And it's a nice size to have as a wedge monitor. And so that way, you know, I rarely ever have any discussion with the monitor engineer, because if I need to hear more or less guitar, I've got a knob for it on my Fender Twin. And I try to use amps that are common enough that I can get it as backline gear. So that way, you know, because if we have a fly-in gig, which we have a lot of, especially doing festivals and stuff, you know, if I want to get like some special, I don't know, you know, what's a fancy amp, a Bogner or something, you know, who knows if they'll have whatever that is. But I know they'll have like, you know, a Marshall 1959 or a Fender Twin. Chances are I've got a pretty good chance of getting that. So that, and just all the distortions coming from the pedals.
And what pedals are you using?
At the moment, I've actually got 4 distortion pedals that 2 of them are always on, and then the other 2, depending on what I'm playing, they're come on or off. But the 2 that are always on at the moment, the main one is an Exotic Effects AC booster, which is one of the most normal sounding distortion boxes. Like nothing special about it except it's really normal. It doesn't mess anything up. It just, you know, a little bit of distortion sounds good, you know, no problems. And then, but actually it doesn't have that much distortion. It's really, you know, it's just a little bit. So I put a what's it called? It's a, I can't remember what it's called. It's made by BBE, and it's got I think it has a picture of a cow on it. It's one knob. It's just like a cow boost or something, or it might be Spanish. I'm getting it confused with the Uno Mus, which was another company. But anyway, it's the one knob boost that made by BBE, and it's just that's just a clean boost, but it pushes the front end of the AC booster. So those 2 together are like, you know, your best AC/DC sound. And then for solos, I've either got the JHS overdrive preamp, which is sort of their copy of the Ingve pedal, the DD or the DOD, whatever drive pedal, whatever that one is, or preamp. And then I'm into, like, you know, shred territory, and that's got a tight low end on it. So if I want to do some chunky stuff, that the low end's real nice and tight. And then before that, at the very beginning of the chain, I've got a who makes it? Mojo Hand, and that one's called a Colossus or a Colossal something. It's based on the word Colossus. That might be it, Colossus. I can't remember exactly. It's, you know, mine's set up a dark orange, and that's like a fuzz with where the low end is a little bit looser, but it's really nice for the high stuff. Like, because if you play like at the high E string, it doesn't get too too thin. It like kind of thickens it up, and the attack on the high strings is real nice. So a lot of times, like when I'm doing a solo, I'll have all four of those pedals on, and I can't stop because it would just be like a nightmare of feedback and hiss. But every attack is beautiful, and I can really feel it percussively. You know, as much as I can hear it, I can feel it. Like coming out of the Fender Twin in front of me, like every note I hit is like, so it really feels good.
And do you use much in terms of sort of modulation and delay and reverbs and things like that?
I've got one always on delay, just so things don't feel too dry, and that's the Catalan bred, whatever their Echoplex thing is. I think it's called a Bell Epic. Yeah, a Bell Epic, I think is the pronunciation. And that's just on a little bit, just that, real subtle. And then for the other stuff, I've got an MXR stereo chorus, really good sounding chorus. I use that a lot. A lot of the Mr. Big stuff it's from the kind of the late 80s, early 90s, so it's nice. And plus I'm the only guitar player, so it's nice, especially the arpeggiated chord stuff. That just sounds nice with the chorus on it. It reminds me of Alex Lifeson. And then I've got lately, like on the beginning of the tour when we were in America, I was using a full tone Deja Vibe, the big one. They made a bunch of different models. The big one is so wonderful, but it runs on it runs on 120. And so for Europe, I mean, I could get an adapter, but I wanted to simplify things. And plus it gave me a chance to try some other pedals. So for Europe, I took that one off and put an Ibanez flanger, which is the little one, the new one they make, just one knob, or no, actually there's three knobs, but it's little. And I also JHS makes a Ross phaser, and which also has a button on it for the vibe pedal. And I think I put it on the phaser setting and put that kind of subtle and fast. It's kind of like the similar vibe kind of pedal, and then the flanger is just nice to have. And so I have fun with those. And and then I've got a Boss chorus. No, I'm sorry, a Boss compressor, the blue one, at the beginning, because when we do, we have a song called "Just Take My Heart" that I need to have that real super sparkly, clean, kind of Trevor Rabin, Queensryche, clean thing, 80s processed sound. And so for that, I turn all four of the overdrive pedals off for the one time in the set, and turn the compressor on and the chorus pedal on, and all of a sudden I get this sparkly, clean, nice thing. And I think that might be all the pedals. Yeah, if there's a power supply, I think that's all. Also at the beginning of the tour, I had an octave pedal in order to make, because one of the songs that we tuned to, or we play it in B, but I used to be able to play it like a low, really low note, and B is not low. So I was using the octave pedal for that. But then I actually tuned the guitar down to B, so I didn't need the octave pedal anymore.
Retune, save a pedal.
That was so much fun talking about my pedals. I know that every guitar player out there, dreams of being interviewed someday so they can tell the world their own arcane pedal selection. I hope that wasn't horribly boring.
It wasn't for me.